thanks again for joining me. And we now continue with our Lamborghini journey through time. This is obviously the Countach. So if you haven't already seen the videos on the 400 GT and the Miura, I recommend you check those out so that you can go through the sequence in chronological order. So the Countach, how was it born? Well, by the time 1971 rolled around, the Miura was kind of getting a bit dated because Ferrari had the Daytona and the Miura was just starting to feel its age. So they knew that they needed to come up with something more modern. And boy, did they do that. As you can see, the bodywork is something that would have been like a spaceship at the time. Again, designed by Marcello Gandini. It employed sort of much the same layout of the Miura, except this time the engine is longitudinal. So the original Lamborghini Countach was designated the LP 400. So longitudinal posterior, so longitudinal engine mounted at the rear, and the 400 because the original Countach was a 4-liter, but this is a 25th anniversary model. So this has the bigger 5.2-liter V12, which puts out 455 horsepower. In this car, it's actually theoretically capable of 295 kilometers per hour. So this is a 1990 car, so it's one of the last Countaches ever built. And as you can see, the bodywork deviated quite a lot from the original Countach. I personally much prefer the purity of the original Countach, but this in sort of very much in keeping with the sort of the over-the-top body kits, etc., that were prevalent in the 80s. It's got all this bodywork. Apparently those sort of air intakes, carbon fiber. So this was the very start of Lamborghini's kind of let's say, dalliance with carbon fiber. Of course, now the new Revuelto, for example, is whole entirely made of carbon fiber. And as an interesting aside, the 25th anniversary model was styled by Horacio Pagani, who, of course, then went on to establish his own car brand. So, yeah, I think what's noticeable is just how angular the bodywork is compared with the Miura, which was all curves and all elegant. That had very much, the Miura had the sort of long bonnet, short tail. This has a very cab-forward design, and then sort of the long rear end because you have the big V12 sitting longitudinally. And you've got these lovely sort of telephone dial wheels. I don't know if these were factory fit. They're Oz Racing. They probably are. Yeah, so you have something that looked just out of the world back in 1971 when it was conceived. And the name Countach, it actually doesn't mean anything. And unlike most other Lamborghinis, which either named after bulls or something to do with bullfighting, Countach is actually an expression of surprise in Piedmontese, in the Piedmontese dialect. And it was sort of one of the sort of helpers who were working with the development team. When he saw the car, he sort of went Countach, and then they thought, well, why don't we name it that? And I think it's a great name. It's so iconic, and I think probably just about every second teenager or boy or girl who was around in the 70s and 80s had a poster of one of these up on the wall. And then, of course, the car also had a sort of starring role in the opening sequence of the Cannonball Run. Who could forget that, if you've seen it? Yeah, I think it sort of moved the game on from the Miura. And yeah, I mean, that's clearly evident in the design language, but also in the way it drives. So why don't we go check it out and see what this baby goes like? And the first challenge, of course, is getting in the thing. You have these scissor doors, which were a first. So you kind of have to limbo your way in like so. And then once you're inside, I'm not really tall. I'm 172. My head is almost up near the roof. The pedals are tiny, so just as well I don't have bigger feet than I do. And yeah, so let's go for a spin, see how it goes. Okay, so here we are in the Countach. This is obviously the successor to the Mura, and this particular car is a 25th anniversary. So it's got the 5.2 liter version of the V12, and yeah, as you can tell, it's loud and fast. And it's not a car for wimps. You really have to use some elbow grease to get it turned. So it's a bit like a gym workout driving this car, but if you can live with that, it's actually quite good fun. And it's pretty quick. But yes, massively compromised in terms of ergonomics. The pedals are tiny. I'm kind of sitting at a funny angle, and visibility is really impeded in all directions. I've got this A-pillar right in my line of sight. I can't see anything forward of the windscreen because the nose just kind of dips away. But what the heck? These are all minor details. Who cares when you've got a V12 that sounds like this? It's just, yeah, it's... Yeah, it's such a different experience from driving any modern supercar. And as you can see inside, the design is sort of very typical of the 70s and 80s. A lot of blocky, sort of square surfaces, none of the curves that you had in the earlier cars. So yes, I'm sort of consistent with the design language on the outside. So let's just sit back and enjoy some of this V12.